Road Zero is basically the first street that starts as soon as you cross the US border into Canada. For the past 5 years, I have smuggled, I would say, between 400 to 500 people across the Canadian border, or vice versa, into the US or into Canada. And throughout the ranges from 14 years old all the way up to 60 years old. The pickup point was Seattle at the Greyhound station, and then drop off basically anywhere once they crossed the Canadian border. Usual drop-off points would be Vancouver. Crossing the US border into Canada costs 900 American dollars. Crossing from Canada into the US costs $2,500. Just because of the security measures and the risks. In Canada, I mean, you cross over within minutes and nothing happens. It's like crossing the street. There was women that I spoke to that they told me that even if they had to sell themselves, like prostituting, they didn't really care as long as they made money and made enough money to dress themselves and have food on the table. In a way, I mean, of course, I would think of it as helping people, but I know that it's a crime, a criminal aspect of what I was doing. I mean, it wasn't right because you really don't know the depth of the people's lives. You really don't know because you don't ask questions in that way. You just say you do it, you ask for the money, they pay you, and you take them, and no questions asked.
Chaque jour, des passeurs facilitent l'entrée d'immigrants illégaux à la frontière canado-américaine. Vivant dans la clandestinité, certains s'avèrent des proies faciles pour des réseaux criminels ou des individus qui les exploitent à des fins sexuelles, de travail forcé ou d'esclavage. C'est ce qu'on appelle la traite de personnes. Impossible de savoir combien sont victimes au Canada.
It wasn't until November of 2003 that we realized that human trafficking may also be happening in Canada. After a big massage parlor raid in Calgary, we found dozens of women had been brought from various countries throughout Asia. Undercover police have negotiated for the purchase of women, and were told by traffickers they can impose whatever price they want. That's not a contract. That's what we call debt bondage. It's a form of slavery that's been around for millennia.
I'd heard from one girl that worked at a high-end massage parlor downtown with me that a lot of the money was to be made in these smaller ones that were in suburbs and that were mainly Asian. When I was working in the Asian massage parlors, we did get a lot of phone calls, like, how young are your girls? You know, I like to come in and see a young Asian girl. And there were about somewhere from 10 to 15 or something young Asian girls. They would wear these flat slippers that you would see sold in the sort of the Asian stores, you know, the colorful colors, and little baby doll dresses. And I found out later some of them from Korea, some of them from Vietnam, and Cambodia too. There was no way these girls were legal. If I had to guess their common age, I think collectively, the even age might have been 15 to 16. These girls acted like they were prisoners there. They would go in the room, out of the room, in the room, 10, 15 times a day. That's all they did. And I do believe to this day the reason I was hired was I was the one that would go out and greet the men. Talk to the clients initially, talk to the police came by, talk to if there was anybody that they didn't recognize, I would go because I spoke English. Western girls were definitely used as a front of these places.
Prostitution is happening in the massage parlors. Everybody knows it. The women that I've worked with that have been trafficked into Canada tells me that they're taking the risk because out of desperation or poverty. Women are recruited through people they know in the community or a respected person or a person that can offer them some hope or a new situation. And the family sometimes know it's a risk, but they're willing to take it because they're really desperate.
The Vancouver Police Department believes there are thousands of women from various Asian countries, but in particular, China is mentioned frequently, who are involved in the sex trade here. When you ask the question of this thousands of people, how many would be under the control of someone and we would believe are victims of trafficking, the answer is we don't know.
There was this one girl that really stood out to me. She was very, very young looking, but she smiled like a little angel. She was always smiling. She would still see regulars who would repeatedly be violent with her. And she told me her name was May. That's the one I had. But May shared a little bit of her story with me. Her relatives had lived back, actually in Hong Kong, her relatives, but in a poor area of Hong Kong. And she had come over with, she said, an uncle. She constantly sent back money there, but what would happen was she was really concerned because she would collect a money envelope and the only person would be that lady, one of the ladies or the man who owned it, said that they would send their money back. So she'd have the posting. And I actually asked her one day, do you sure it's getting to your parents? Do they write you? Do your family write you? And then she said, no. I don't get any correspondence and stuff. I'm here illegally. However, then she started asking me to send it. So I ended up at the end of my shift, I would go and do all her business for her and started sending it back. I didn't see May for a week. And I don't know what happened to her. One girl sort of said that, I got her in trouble, this and that. So I never saw May again. And when the owners would not give me a good reason why she hadn't come back to work or why I couldn't even telephone her, I quit.
The identification of victims is one of the most frustrating experiences that I have in my whole life in terms of victim of trafficking. Why? Because I have to wait, seated on my desk, that maybe someone that day is going to show up. Do I have the resources to go to the places that they told me other women are or other minors are? No, I don't.
Pour leur permettre de témoigner et afin de monter la preuve, Citoyenneté et Immigration Canada peut octroyer aux victimes présumées un permis de séjour temporaire de 6 mois. Malgré cette mesure incitative, plusieurs hésitent toujours à parler.
La noche que yo crucé la frontera de Estados Unidos a Canadá, fue muy impactante para mí porque yo soñaba vivir en este país, llegar a Canadá. Ya es un sueño que uno trae. Es como cuando tú vas a la escuela y pasas otro grado, tú te sientes bien porque lograste una meta. El ser humano es capaz de hacer cualquier cosa por ayudar a su familia. Y sabemos que Canadá, Estados Unidos son países ricos, en abundancia, en riqueza, en los cuales al venir aquí en un momento podemos hacer un principio, un futuro para volver a nuestro país. Yo me vine siendo menor de edad en mi país, pero yo no le dije a mi papá ni a mi mamá, yo me vine escondido. Esperé que ellos no se dieran cuenta, agarré un autobús y me vine. Cuando caímos aquí, venimos a una casa donde vivíamos 12 en un solo cuarto, uno encima de otro, en un colchón, en una cama. La verdad, no tenemos una vida normal como un ser humano. Cuando alguien viene de nuestro país, siempre hay un familiar acá que lo trae. Él paga por él al coyote para que lo pasen y lo trae acá con destino. Pero esta persona, cuando lo trajeron, menor de edad, él tiene una deuda de $4,000. Estos jóvenes caen allá, se hacen pandilleros, cuando menos acuerdas son asesinados o son asesinos. Y si yo tengo un hermano, yo soy drug dealer, vendo droga, un ejemplo, yo a mi hermano lo voy a inducir al mismo camino, aunque sea menor de edad, vaya a vender droga para que me pague.
You know, the youngest one we found out there was 10 years old. You know, had a mouthful of cocaine, you know, and then swallowed it when he seen the police coming. And when you ask if the young boys from Honduras are exploited, they certainly are, because if you're having a tough time down there making a living, and somebody offers you money, you know, and a place to stay, and you know, and then they find out that that's true, you know, they are going to come up. So I certainly don't blame the kids at all. You know, so the organizers or the ring that runs them, you know, are bringing these kids up with the sole purpose of making money off them.
How long you been down here on the east side?
Oh, that's a good question. 28 years, because you recognize me, right?
That's good. 28 years is 28 years.
If you travel a SkyTrain station, you'll see them on the SkyTrain, you'll see them at the stations, you'll see them in Newsminster, Burnaby, you know, so they're sort of all over the place, because they certainly haven't gone away. They're just getting smarter. When, you know, when the police change their tactics, you know, so are the drug dealers.
Un policía me ayudó y me dijo, para que veas que hay personas buenas en este país, te vamos a ayudar, porque yo le pedí que me arrestara, me llevara a la prisión, porque en la prisión iba a tener que comer, iba a tener dónde dormir, porque no tenía dónde dormir ni dónde comer.
In the fall of 1999, Covenant House became aware of the fact that there were Honduran boys on our streets. So we came up with the idea of inviting two of our youth workers from Casa Alianza from Honduras. They came up and stayed with us for about 3 months. And they would go out every day onto the streets of Vancouver to try to locate these young men and to offer, if the young man wanted to return to Honduras, we would keep them in our shelter temporarily, and then we would repat them back to their home. Our youth workers found the young boys and were able to talk with them, but none of the young boys really took up our offer.
Why repatriate them instead of rehabilitate them in Canada?
Well, we thought that it would be better to get them back to their own country, to their own families, because in a sense they were lured out of their country, probably to send money back home. We felt that if we kept them, there's a whole cultural difference, and why keep them in Canada? They should be with their families, because these young men were quite young.
If you send a person back, you have to provide that minor with a choice. What that minor is going to do in Honduras. What is the future of that minor? And you can guess, if you have experience, that maybe he will be on his way again to United States or other countries, because that's the only way that he knows to survive.
Bueno, yo conozco jóvenes de 14, 15, 16 años que ellos quieren salir de ese mundo, de vender droga, pero no lo hacen porque no tienen una oportunidad de ir a la escuela y desarrollarse en otra área. Y la verdad, ¿qué futuro le espera a un joven de 14, 15, 16 años metido en ese mundo de la droga? Y Canadá tiene el power, el poder para rescatar a esta gente, ponerlos a estudiar y hacer buenos hombres de ellos.
Boys that are used to sell drugs and whatever are victims of the criminal mind of the criminal network. The solution is not a temporary resident permit. The solution is not a humanitarian application. The solution is to apply our judicial system and protect minors and treat the minors in the same way that we treat our own minors. And the future has to be protection.
Il n'y a pas que les clandestins qui soient victimes de la traite. Employés de maison, travailleurs agricoles, ouvriers en usine, la plupart du temps des immigrants travaillant en toute légalité au Canada peuvent aussi se retrouver privés de leur liberté de mouvement.
The ability of traffickers to bring foreign victims into Canada has no limits. They've manipulated and used basically every immigration program that we have, whether it's a student visa, visitor visa, work visa, family sponsorship, you name it. They've taken advantage of all of them.
Les aides familiales résidentes ont un permis de travail émis au nom de leur employeur et elles sont tenues de vivre chez lui. Ces règles rendent ces travailleuses de l'ombre, attitrées à la garde d'enfants et aux soins de personnes âgées ou handicapées, à risque d'être exploitées.
Elle est isolée et elle est exploitée. Elle est exploitée comment? Comment on l'exploite?
Je sais pas, elle travaille, 16 heures par jour. Les lois du travail sont pas respectées.
OK.
Elle est payée à moins que le salaire minimum.
OK. Est-ce qu'elle est libre de partir?
C'est une bonne question.
Ben,
Qu'est-ce que la liberté de partir?
Oui, mais psychologiquement, vous l'avez dit, il y a quelque chose qui l'arrête de partir. Qui est en contrôle de la situation? C'est toujours ça qu'il faut se poser comme question lorsqu'on travaille avec des cas de traite de personnes.
Traite des personnes. Quiconque recrute, transporte, transfère, reçoit, détient, cache ou héberge une personne ou exerce un contrôle, une direction ou une influence sur les mouvements d'une personne en vue de l'exploiter ou de faciliter son exploitation.
On fait à la GRC des présentations aux organismes non gouvernementaux parce que ces organismes-là peuvent être en contact avec des victimes. Donc, c'est très important que les organismes connaissent le phénomène de la traite, sachent qu'est-ce que la traite et, évidemment, si elles sont en contact avec des victimes, qui nous contactent pour qu'on puisse mener l'enquête.
Comment qu'on va chercher ces victimes-là? Parce que c'est vraiment pas évident d'aller chercher des victimes de traite de personnes. On s'est assis avec policiers, intervenants communautaires, et puis on s'est dit, on se mettait dans la peau d'une victime, comment cette victime-là peut penser? Parce que souvent, on sait, hein, elle se considère pas victime de traite de personnes. On a fait des affiches pour les organismes communautaires, pour les victimes spécifiquement.
If you see that, for example, on the street,
and you see a poster like this, what for you would that mean?
It's emptiness. That's what it means to me, if I see. Because there's no promises, it's empty. I don't see anything. And it's scary. It scares me a lot. That's what I can say about this.
And do you think when you see this, there's an opening to something?
No. I'm more on the side of my status in immigration rather than asking for help. Because if I ask for help, in my mind, they will look at my status. What is my status here in Canada? And I'm afraid to go back home. So I'd rather accept the fact of looking at emptiness and be scared and stay.
On a eu un cas il n'y a pas longtemps, psychologiquement isolée, c'est-à-dire qu'elle a les clés, là, mais sauf qu'il est impossible dans sa tête de penser qu'elle peut aller plus loin que la cour. Ça, c'est une zone grise. C'est-à-dire qu'il n'y a pas... On peut imaginer que ça s'en va vers la traite, mais il n'y a pas de traite comme telle. Fait que votre campagne dans ces cas-là, qu'est-ce que... Ou l'action de la GRC dans ces cas-là, où est-ce qu'elle se situe?
Nous, on travaille avec la loi. On n'a pas le choix. C'est avec ça qu'on travaille. C'est l'outil de travail des policiers, des avocats. Et puis, c'est avec ça qu'ils réussissent à amener la preuve. On est là pour travailler pour elle, mais c'est aussi, il faut penser, est-ce qu'à la cour, comment l'avocat de la défense va lui poser les questions?
On a rencontré beaucoup de victimes, mais les enquêtes de traite de personnes sont des enquêtes qui sont très compliquées. Donc, le fait d'avoir une enquête ne signifie pas nécessairement que le dossier va aller à la cour et qu'il va y avoir des accusations.
To date, there have only been a small handful of cases where labor exploitation has been confirmed as a form of human trafficking, but it certainly is something which is beneath the surface.
Comme le témoignage de Julie et de plusieurs autres aides familiales, la loi, dans certains cas, est plutôt une contrainte qu'une délivrance. Puis c'est ça qui nous frustre, c'est qu'on voit devant nous un cas de traite, un cas d'exploitation, sur toutes les formes que nous, on considère de la traite ou de l'exploitation, mais que le code criminel
ne le définit pas comme vous l'entendez, par exemple.
Des Canadiennes sont aussi victimes de la traite de personnes.
When the Crown was contacted in the first conviction and told by the police, we have a human trafficking case for you to prosecute, he asked how many people were in the container shipment. Well, when they told him it was actually a Canadian girl who had been forced to sell herself for sex on the internet and that the trafficker was a street gang member, the prosecutor asked them, are you sure you want to go ahead with this? Sure enough, they got out the criminal code and found that this was happening in their own country. It didn't fit the stereotype of what was happening in the movies, but it was nevertheless a situation where a person was controlling another individual and profiting very lucratively off of them.
I was in a group home for, underage girls, and there was a girl there that was recruiting other girls, but invited to a party. We've met some of the guys. We exchanged phone numbers. They acted like he was interested, wanted to get together, and take me out for a date. I never had a boyfriend before. He seemed nice enough, and bought me some nice clothes and things like that. Then he asked if I wanted to come, and I said no. Then it was I owed money for the things he had bought me at the mall. And the next time I met up with him, he said, "We're going," and I didn't have a choice. We stopped right before we got to the border, and then they said, "Go." We went into the trunk, myself and my best friend, and they said to be quiet while we crossed. The day I crossed the border, I didn't know what was in store. I didn't know what I was going to be doing or where I was going. The ones that took me there sold me to other guys. I ended up inside in a house in a suburb of Seattle with, there was other girls there, young girls. Mostly, none of them were older than 15. And there was lots of different Asian guys, you know, drinking, doing drugs, you know. There was lots of money around and stuff, and basically told to put on some lingerie type outfit, and then guys were just sent in to sleep with me.
You were 13.
Yeah, I was 13. I was not allowed to go outside, and not for about 6 months. They really made sure to drill it into you that if you said anything or told anything, that they would kill you or hurt family, or, you know, nobody would believe, and they'd find you anywhere. Obviously, my life never was the same after that. 7 months after, there was a raid, and I ended up in jail. I was pregnant by one of them at the time, too. I found out when I was in jail that I was pregnant. And at first, I was scared. I didn't want to say anything, but they actually were really nice. They already knew what was going on, but without any of the girls willing to say anything, nothing could be done.
Carla a témoigné contre ces trafiquants qui ont ensuite tenté de l'assassiner en incendiant son appartement. Après 2 mois d'hospitalisation et plusieurs chirurgies de reconstruction faciale, l'adolescente a tant bien que mal repris le cours de sa vie.
What do I do now? I work the street. And of course, I work the street and I do drugs, mostly so I don't have to think about the past, and it's like a vicious cycle. I don't like sex. I have a hard time. I'm not in a relationship because I can't get close to men. Just recently, I'm starting to change and think about doing something else with my life.
Hey Marco, yes. Jeudi passé, on a fait le bar qu'on a visité. Oui. 13 ans. Toi, ta fille que tu as rencontrée hier, elle avait quel âge?
Elle venait juste d'avoir 16. Elle dansait à la même place avec des fausses cartes pendant 2 semaines.
On reçoit souvent des policiers qui entendent des filles témoigner de qu'est-ce qu'ils ont vécu, des actes de violence assez graves. Et à un moment donné, on les croit pas. On dit c'est comme inventé, c'est trop grave qu'est-ce qu'ils ont vécu. Ça fait partie du milieu. Une fille de se faire mettre un gun sur la tête comme menace, de se faire agresser par plusieurs membres de gangs de rue comme initiation, c'est régulier dans ce milieu-là.
Il y a une différence entre danser des danses à 10 dans des bars straight puis de danser dans des bars à gaffe où il faut que tu fasses des prostitutions dans les isoloirs. Puis là, elle a fait le cheminement déjà, elle est habituée, elle sait c'est quoi danser. Elle sait c'est quoi d'aller dans les isoloirs, dans les salons VIP, puis de se faire toucher les seins, les fesses, puis tout. Fait que là, elle a franchi cette étape-là. Donc là, c'est sûr et certain qu'à Montréal, il y a bien plus de surveillance dans les bars qu'il y en a en région. Donc là, c'est sûr que si elle ressort, elle va s'en aller en région. Puis c'est là qu'on va la perdre. Parce que là, elle va commencer à faire de la prostitution. Elle va se promener au Nouveau-Brunswick jusqu'en Ontario. Puis elle se tiendra plus à Montréal parce qu'elle est connue. Puis on les vérifie à Montréal, les clubs de danseuses. Fait que c'est garanti, c'est le pattern. J'en ai des exemples à vous en compter jusqu'à demain.
Souvent, qu'est-ce qu'on peut voir, c'est qu'une personne va attirer cette personne-là, inciter, l'introduire dans le milieu. Et là, on va l'avoir carrément une vente à une autre personne que lui va déterminer comment il va l'exploiter. Ils vont regarder la personne, va dire « Ah, moi, je pourrais faire de l'argent en la faire travailler dans une bar de danseuse. » Ou elle, on pourra la faire travailler dans une agence d'escorte ou faire des maisons de débauche ou travailler dans un salon de massage.
La peur des gars? Ben oui, mais si son discours était véridique à l'effet que c'est elle qui contrôlait la situation, puis qu'il n'y avait pas d'emprise sur elle, elle n'aurait pas peur de ressortir. Mais là, elle a peur parce que c'est pas ça la réalité. La réalité, c'est que si elle sort, ils vont reprendre le contrôle sur elle. Mais elle l'admet pas. Fait qu'on s'entend, c'est de valeur. Si ça aurait pu permettre qu'on procède à l'arrestation d'un gars qui peut-être peut en pimper d'autres, ça aurait été bon, mais je le sais pas, elle me le dit pas.
C'est un crime extrêmement grave, à savoir que l'exploitation d'une personne peut amener d'autres personnes aussi à être exploitées. Des fois, on est obligé de contraindre la victime de venir à la cour puis témoigner, même contre son gré. On doit toujours balancer les deux, l'intérêt de la victime versus l'intérêt de la société.
Quand on va parler des lieux où les filles, où le recrutement se passe, je pense qu'on ne sera pas étonné d'entendre dire qu'au niveau du centre jeunesse, c'en est un endroit parce que c'est sûr que ça rôde autour. C'est déjà arrivé qu'on a eu des personnes qui sont venues, même à votre unité, passer des téléphones cellulaires par les grilles aux filles pour pouvoir les recruter. Alors, c'est quelque chose, c'est une réalité à laquelle on fait face dans notre quotidien.
C'est très difficile d'attaquer le chum ou le pimp de la jeune parce que, dans le fond, elle, il y a encore un peu l'idée dans sa tête que c'est son amant, son chum, quelqu'un qu'elle aime, fait que ses loyautés sont vraiment là. Fait que c'est très difficile de nous autres d'approcher le sujet en jugeant, parce que là, ils vont se renfermer tout de suite parce que, hey, tu parles de quelqu'un qui m'aime, qui s'occupe de moi, puis tout.
The topic of what we're discussing is human trafficking, exploitation. Okay. Prostitution. It goes by a lot of different words. Do you know of anyone who's, been approached to be part of the sex trade?
Yeah, I've had friends.
Yeah?
Many friends.
Okay. What places would they try and hook up with people?
Schools, open areas like metros.
Okay.
Anywhere. Group homes.
And what age group are we talking about here?
Between 13, 18, 21.
Okay.
Do you know of any other way that, like, I mean, how do you get a 12-year-old? Certainly not by saying, hey, I'll hook you up for a couple of dollars.
Well, if it's a 12-year-old, it's like candy and I could get you a dog. They usually approach them, oh, I'm looking for my dog, can you help me find it? Of course, a little 12-year-old's gonna go with them. It's a puppy.
To your knowledge, right, do the people who are working in there or maybe even owning the place know what's going down? Like, know what it's being used for? I mean, because like you're talking about like a 12 and 13-year-old, right? Mm-hmm. Clearly a 12 and 13-year-old being dropped off doesn't look like an adult who's paid for a hotel.
Well, in a way I do think they know, and in a way that they're just blind to see what's really happening. They really don't care. They're getting their money, they're getting their end of it.
Right.
So they're not gonna really care if like the 12-year-old or the 16-year-old is on a missing list or anything. They're just gonna get their money. Usually you'll see one guy lingering, walking back and forth around you, checking you out. He'll come up and approach you and say, so what's your name, or how you doing, you look good, and I've seen you around here many times before, so what do you do, how do you have fun, what's your name, how old are you? Then he'll ask you, why don't you show me how good you perform? Well, they say it's pretty simple. All you gotta do is suck some dick and give them, have sex with them in different positions. Then by the end you know it, you're like prostituting yourself, you're selling yourself, and you don't know what to do. And you're hooked on drugs and hooked on alcohol, pills, all type of stuff. Everyone has this different role. They either drive, they watch, they stake out and they're on a different corner. They exchange the money for the girl, and then it's done. The girl doesn't get anything besides clothing, drugs, alcohol, and nothing. Most money they will get was if they smoke, they get a pack of cigarettes. I don't think in anyone's mind that it's normal, but if you're a young age and your parents are separated or you have no father figure to look up to and have to be loved by, you would look for it in a negative way because you're not ready to have a boyfriend, or boyfriends, your love life hasn't been so great. So you look for it in other ways, either drugs, partying, alcohol, or older guys that are close to your father's age. So you do anything for what they want and make them feel good about you, and you get praises for that. So eventually you're like, oh, this is what I want, this is the attention I need, this is what I've been looking for. So you continue staying with them and you continue doing what they ask for. Even though you might feel it's wrong, you still feel good in a way because you're getting the attention. It's not the right attention, but you're still getting it. I'm bringing you to Saint Jacques. It's a long street. There's Motel Saint Jacques, Motel Raphael, PJ Pub, bars and little areas where you could have customers or meet up with people. There's a couple motels that are coming up after the gas station over there. There's a motel on the left. It's a Motel Sunrise. It's pretty cheap. Sometimes You might live in the motel, stay at the motel night and day, and the customers will come to your door.
Can we talk about that 16 years old and is in front of me? You know what I mean? How we are going to protect that person that is pregnant from rape? Yes, she had been contaminated. Wow. She's not that pure teenager that you want to see. She was a prostitute. Who cares? What is the future of this young girl? You know, and what is our obligation toward that young girl? For me, it's not a religion discussion. For me, it's not a moral discussion or ethical. It's a human rights issue. The human rights of these people have been violated. What do I do to protect them?
Plusieurs femmes et enfants autochtones s'exilent vers les grandes villes canadiennes. Fuyant des problèmes d'inceste, de drogue et de pauvreté chronique, nombreux tombent sous l'emprise d'exploiteurs.
We're in the Balmoral Hotel, so I'm looking around and remembering these rooms, especially when we were walking up the stairs. It reminds me of where I was at one time in my life. I'm originally from Fort St. James. I come from a really small community. My reserve's called Nagasley, and it's up north in the northern, about 12 hours from Vancouver. My mom and my dad were alcoholics. I believe I was human trafficked. It's happening a lot. It's like people want to look the other way, and the reality is it's right in our community. You know, from a small reserve into a town and then moved into the big city. You know, it's like being like cattle, right? You move them from here to here and then over here. And I remember my cousin, we'd run away. She was already on the run, and I would run away with her. I was just following her because she's my family. Like, I love her, I trust her. She looks like me, she's my family, and I know that. So we ended up coming to Vancouver, and she took me to the west end of Vancouver. I remember I was thinking I was getting a babysitting job so that we have somewhere to sleep and stay. And this older lady, she brought me to her, and I babysat for her. But eventually, they put me out on the corner. They put me in with an older man who's probably like my grandpa's age. And she got paid from me. So I believe I was exploited by a family member, but also this woman was a lot older. On a night that I would perform sex with an older man. Well, I know that in the morning that I get to sleep on her waterbed, and then she would feed me with ice cream and strawberries. And that was like a special treat. And then I got to watch movies, right, cartoons, because I was 12 years old. The lifestyle that I lived, I end up down here on Hastings and Main, you know, in the Balmoral, and working the corner. In 1994, I met this man. He was a date, a trick, and I was down here across the street at the Brandy's Hotel, and he had a red truck. And he also had a lot of money. And he said, let's go party. I got a good place for us to go party. And of course I went. I thought for many, many years it was a cow farm. I'll never forget the smell. I ran away from that farm, running down Lougheed Highway, and I never went back. I got so scared of that whole experience that I left the street. Because I don't know, like my spirit said, you gotta stop what you're doing. You know, the police, I remember trying to tell them what happened in my experience, but I was a drug addict, I was First Nations, I was a prostitute, and they basically said I was transient. She's so messed up that she doesn't even know if she's coming or going. And they didn't take anything I said to them seriously. There's a reason why I do the work that I do.
Just doing outreach. I work for Peers Vancouver. Have you heard of us?
Because I never want to forget where I come from, and I don't want to ever forget my sisters. And the ones that are still alive, they're the ones I reach out to when I work. When I go on the street, I hand out the harm reductions, you know, the needle exchange, condoms, lube, anything to help them stay safe while they're still working in the sex trade. They really like getting candy and smokes.
Do you remember me? I'm CJ. Yeah. I used to be down here. How are you doing? Do you want some candies? Do you need any harm reduction?
And to me, when I think of candy, I think of myself as being a child. And then a lot of times, I see the people that knew me when I was on the street. So I'm carrying a message that, you know what, you can get out of the sex trade. You can change your life. You know, it's pretty powerful. You know, I have purpose in my life today. All I thought was I was a junkie, a hooker, and an Indian. And I was worth $10. Today, I'm worth $1 million, or probably more. I'm a woman, and I'm a strong person, you know? So Canadians need to wake up and help the next sister or brother. And by bringing it back to pushing us down, it's not about pushing us down, it's like helping us up.
Peu à peu, les victimes sortent de leur mutisme. Au cours de la dernière année seulement, 4 Canadiens ont été reconnus coupables de traite de personnes à l'intérieur des frontières du pays pour avoir exploité des adolescentes à des fins sexuelles. La traite internationale demeure toutefois difficile à réprimer. Au moment de terminer ce film, personne n'a encore été reconnu coupable d'un tel crime au Canada.